Right, good morning everybody and welcome to today's Planning Committee meeting. I am Councillor Caroline Karimi-Gorondo and I will be chairing the Planning Committee meeting today. On the top table are Aaron Pretty, who's presenting, Chris Watts, Area Planning Manager, Tracy Lincoln, Development Manager, Eleanor Lamming, who's Vice Chair, and Leah Arthurton, Democratic Services Officer. We are not expecting a fire drill today, but if the alarm does sound, the fire exits are clearly signed in green. This meeting is being live streamed. We have no members of the public or speakers here, so I'm going to skip the speech for that one. This is going on a bit too long, isn't it? Yeah. Can I please ask you to ensure all mobile phones and electronic devices are turned to silent? Councillors, please do not use your mobile phone whilst the committee is in session. We will have comfort breaks if needed. If you must use your mobile, then please leave the room. However, you will appreciate that this could result in you not being able to vote on the matter under discussion at the time you leave the room. The order of business is set out on the agenda. We have no members of the public, as I said before. The order will be as follows. The planning officer will present the application, and the council members who are not members of the committee will then be invited to speak. The committee will then discuss and determine the application. Is there any questions before I open the meeting? No. Do we have any declarations of interest in this application? No? Apologies, Leah?
So we received apologies and absence from Councillor Hempsall, with Councillor Clancy substituting, Councillor Mia with Councillor Catchpole substituting.
Thank you. I'd like to confirm the minutes of the meeting from the Planning Committee held on the 6th of December. Has anybody got any comments on the minutes? Any matters arising from the minutes? No? Okay, we'll go to the application. It's an application in Reefham for a change of use from commercial to residential, and I will hand over to Aaron to present, please.
Good morning, members. So this application involves Ivy House, which lies in the town centre of Reefham, and as such it is within its settlement limits and conservation area. The house itself is a Grade 2 listed dwelling house that has been converted into offices and a shop. The building is indicated to be 18th century with a later porch and shopfront alterations. The proposal is to change the use of the office element of the building into a single residential dwelling, with the ground floor shop currently occupied by Flower Folk to be retained within its current Class E commercial use. The proposal is required to be presented to the committee due to the potential loss of employment opportunities. So here you can see the centre of Reefham on the map there, and I'll up this one so it's a bit clearer. So this is the front, the principal elevation of the building. So no external or substantive internal alterations are indicated at this stage, and a further listed building application may be required in the future. A comparable change could typically occur under a prior notification process under Part 3, Class MA of the General Permitted Development Order, and thus not need to engage local policy. However, this is not possible due to the building's listed status. So here you can see how the dwelling is divided up. So the Flower Folk to the left there is going to be retained, as I've mentioned, so it still has that active retail frontage in the town centre, whilst the red line building with a typical dwelling appearance is proposed to be changed. So this is the view to the east into the town square, and you can see the building on the right. And similarly, this is the view to the west with the building on the left. So at this stage, the floor plan is just indicated, just to give us an idea of the essentially a dwelling house could be achieved in that building. But the intention is for the owners to sell the building as they're quite elderly and they wish to pass it on. So the present, it has been demonstrated that the building has been advertised for sale for a reasonable period with a reputable agent, including going to auction with a considerably lower reserve price than the original starting price. The applicants have received little or no interest in the building as a commercial unit, and the agents consider the building not to be suitable for modern day office use. It is also noted that there is similar office space for rent in the town by the same estate agent, and therefore, given this, I consider that there has been sufficient evidence that employment use of this element of the building is no longer attractive, and therefore the proposal has satisfied the marketing requirements to support the principle of change of use. In terms of design, no alterations to the external appearance are proposed, and details of the internal works are not detailed. These works may require a separate listed building consent. As such, there is not considered to be an adverse impact on the historic fabric of the building or surrounding conservation area. The property can accommodate a reasonable amenity space for the future occupants, whilst not adversely impacting the surrounding residential properties. Whilst the property has no allocated parking, the Highways Authority has raised no objections, and the site is well related to key services to not have to rely on a private vehicle. It is also noted that we have now received a signed unilateral undertaking in order to secure gyre ramps mitigation. Therefore, the proposal is considered to accord with policy as noted in section 3 of my report, and the recommendation is to authorise the Director of Place to approve, with conditions subject to addressing the requirements under the Habitats and Species Regulations 2017 regarding nutrient neutrality. Thank you.
Thank you. Personally, I think this is quite a straightforward application. It has been advertised a long time with no takers. There are other areas in Reefham that you said for offices which have not been taken up, and it's putting a house back into the community, I think. Does anybody have any questions? Paul?
Hi. Just a couple really of clarification. So I was a little bit confused, but from the pictures that we saw, whether it's got access at the back, because there's a garden there, but it doesn't look like there's any access at the back. But there is a road at the back.
Yeah, that's correct. So I have got a picture here of the rear, just in case, and you can see a gate just indicated there, and that's essentially to the building's courtyard, which you can see in this space here. So the gate in theory would be here. I don't know if that gate's actually used or not.
No, I saw that picture. I thought so that back door there. Where's that in relation to?
That would be in this. That would be around this corner here.
So any future residents could use that access, couldn't they? They could use it, yeah.
And parking.
So yeah, as noted, there is no formal allocated parking for the building itself, but Highways Authority have been consulted and they raise no issue to that. Obviously, there is an element of the offices could accommodate quite a few people, as you've mentioned, and therefore that generates, in theory, more traffic and parking requirements than a single dwelling.
There is the main car park in Reefham in this square, isn't there? Yeah, and I don't think there's any restrictions on parking there, is there?
Is there? I guess.
Sorry.
I don't think there is, but I don't know if there's any plans in the future to restrict that or not. But as present, there is parking in. You might be able to see it here, actually in front of the dwelling as well, and it doesn't. I don't believe so. There's any sort of 2-hour requirements or anything like that there.
Do you think well, I guess I know the answer to this, but if someone buys this property, they're probably going to want to knock it around and things. And I know you said that internally there's a separate planning application. We're not considering the impact of change of use to a residential, which would mean that they're more likely to want to do some works outside. Is that something we can consider here or not?
Yeah, the floor plan itself is just indicative. So the applicants themselves aren't planning to do any of the physical alterations, but the alterations do require a listed building consent, which our heritage officer would pick up and consider. But that's not necessarily part of this application.
And clearly the the building has formerly been a residential property and lends itself to residential occupation. So any future alterations would require separate list of building consents. So you don't need to, so they will be controlled separately, and if they aren't acceptable, they wouldn't be approved, albeit there is an acceptable form of habiting that property without alterations.
This application is just change of use from commercial to residential.
In 5.4, state that is also noted that the estate agent have other similar office space available in reform for sale or rent. So if we allow permission for this building into commercial, into residential, does it cause any bad influence on others to change? If they, as it says that there is a lot of the same similar space for sale or rent, does it make any bad influence on them to, they also think can be changed into a residential, and does it cause loss of more potential employment? Does it, can we consider that, or do you catch my point?
Yes, yeah. So we should be considering the merits of this application on its own, but it is noted that if the other units in town, if they obviously went through that marketing period, they could propose the application to us, and then we would have to consider that on their own merits as well.
If I can just jump in. We've also got the context in terms of the government wanting to diversify our high streets because of obviously they're struggling somewhat. We're not getting the straight retail we historically got. So generally, government are trying to push that mixed use agenda in terms of our high streets. Having said that, we have policies in place which protect percentages of our high street from non-commercial retail uses, and therefore if you were to get more and more applications, you get to a point where actually you push against your policy around protecting the integrity of the high street. So I think each individual application would need to come forward is where it necessary. There are wider permitted development rights now allow a greater use between different commercial use classes on high streets, but clearly, you know, why this is acceptable, it still retains an element of commercial use on the ground floor, so that's not being wholly lost, and the marketing has demonstrated in this case it's acceptable. We don't consider this particular scheme impacts the vitality and viability of this high street, and because you know, however, I totally take your point. If it was to continue, then we would need to consider whether or not there becomes a point when that's unacceptable.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just if this did pass into the hands of somebody who wanted to reside there and change it into domestic, would they then need to apply again to change it back to offices, or does the enabling of its use as offices carry forward?
So it actually depends if they implement the planning permission. So if the new buyers were to purchase the property but not actually carry out that change of use, in theory they could still purchase it and then use it as offices. As soon as they implement that change of use, it would have to be used as a dwelling, and then they would have to come in with another application to revert it back.
Remember, it's been on the market for such a long time and they couldn't sell it as offices. So just reverting back to what it was before, really, isn't it? Karen.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I was going to say very similar to what you've said. For me, looking at policy 2 of the local plan, I think it's been fair to say it's demonstrated that the employment use is not viable. As it's been said in here, it's been vacant since well over a year now, and it sounds as though the owners will use their best endeavours to sell it. So for me, it feels straightforward. I don't have a problem with it in that there is still commercial space within the building with the flower shop, so they're not taking it all away. But to have a vacant property occupied, for me, would be good for the town rather than sitting there empty. So I would support this. Thank you.
It is unanimous, Chair.
So it's just noting on page 19 of your agenda, the appeals received. Obviously, we'll update anything as that comes through as necessary. Really just to note there on page 20, appeal decisions. First one is an enforcement appeal decision which was dismissed, and there is an enforcement, the enforcement notice was upheld on that, and there's a period for which to vacate the site. The second decision on that page is a scheme in Corston, which was for 5 properties. A good appeal decision from our perspective. It has confirmed the council's position in terms of the sustainability of the location and poor access to public transport, adverse highways impact. This one again got caught, as similarly a lot of them are now, with nutrient neutrality in terms of failing to demonstrate that. But generally in terms of its poor sustainability and conflict with your policy GC2, that's a good one to go and have a read of. Thank you, Chairman.